All right, so you hear this phrase thrown around a lot, the Phillips curve, and you're interested in getting a handle on it. Well, we've got a stack of articles and research here, so we're going to take a deep dive into just what exactly is this Phillips curve and why should we care?
Well, it all goes back to this economist A.W. Phillips back in the 1950s. He looked at about a century's worth of UK data from 1861 to 1957.
Wow, that's a lot of data.
It is, a whole century. And he noticed this pretty interesting pattern when it came to unemployment and wage increases.
Okay, unemployment and wages. I see where this might be going.
Yeah, so he found that when unemployment was low, wages tended to rise more quickly, kind of like they were on a seesaw, one goes up, the other goes down.
Right, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So more jobs, more competition for workers, companies got to pay more to attract talent.
Exactly. Classic supply and demand, right?
Yep. But so that's just wages, right? I'm guessing
Yeah.
this Phillips curve is about more than just wages, right?
You got it. This is where economists like Paul Samuelson and Robert Solow come in. They took Phillips's work and said, this relationship between unemployment and wages, maybe it applies to overall prices, not just wages. That's how the Phillips curve as we know it was born.
Oh, okay. So instead of just wages going up when jobs are plentiful,
Right.
the cost of everything increases.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that makes it a much bigger deal for sure. I mean, especially if you're, the one managing the household budget and everything's getting more expensive.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is where it gets really interesting because think about it from a policymaker's perspective. If you're trying to manage a country's economy, you'd love to have low unemployment, but you also want to keep prices stable.
Right.
But the Phillips curve seemed to suggest that you might have to choose one or the other.
Oh, I see. It's a trade-off.
Right. Like, do you risk higher inflation to get people back to work? Or do you, try to keep inflation under control, but maybe have more people out of work?
Tough choices. No wonder this curve caught on, right? I mean, but it sounds almost too simple, right? Like, was it really that simple, this trade-off?
Yeah, well, the 1970s had other plans.
Oh, no. Here we go.
Yeah, the 1970s kind of threw a wrench in the works with something called stagflation. High inflation, high unemployment, all at the same time.
Whoa. So like the worst of both worlds.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
And the Phillips curve was supposed to be this trade-off, not this, simultaneous problem.
Okay, so did the Phillips curve just break?
Well, not exactly break, but it definitely needed a serious rethink. And that's where Milton Friedman and Edmund Phelps came in. They argued that this trade-off the Phillips curve showed, it was only a short-term thing.
Oh, interesting. So it wasn't the whole story.
No, definitely not the whole story. They said that over the long term, people's expectations about inflation play a huge role. Like if people expect inflation to be high, they're going to demand higher wages. And then businesses will raise prices even more in anticipation of, further inflation and so on. It becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh, okay. So like even if the economy isn't actually in a state of high inflation, if people just think it's going to happen,
Right, exactly.
then it will.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's not just about how many jobs are out there or the actual prices, but what people think will happen in the future.
Exactly. And this ties into the idea of the natural rate of unemployment. You've probably heard that term thrown around before, right?
I have, yeah. But to be honest, I'm not really sure what it means.
Well, that was another thing Friedman and Phelps brought to the table. It's often called NEX-ARU, non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment. And basically, it's this idea that there's a limit to how low unemployment can go before you start triggering accelerating inflation.
Oh, I see. So you can't just keep pushing for lower and lower unemployment without
Yeah.
consequences. For
Right. There's this sweet spot, right, where the economy is doing well, people have jobs, but inflation isn't out of control.
that. Okay. That makes sense. So what these guys figured out, I mean, it was groundbreaking enough to win them Nobel Prizes, right?
Yeah. It was a big deal.
So let's bring it up to today. I mean, in recent years, we've seen really low unemployment, but inflation hasn't gone crazy, right?
Yeah.
So how does the Phillips curve fit into what's been happening lately?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it gets us to another twist in the story, the flattened Phillips
A
curve.
flattened curve.
Yeah, so one of our sources here is this article from the St. Louis Fed. And they talk about how we've had record low unemployment in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
But inflation has remained relatively, tame, not what we'd expect from the traditional Phillips curve.
So the relationship we used to see, it's not as strong anymore.
Yeah. And this St. Louis Fed article quotes James Mullard, the president of the St. Louis Fed. He says, and I quote, "If you put it in a murder mystery framework, who killed the Phillips curve? It was the Fed that killed the Phillips curve.
Wait, the Fed killed it.
Yeah, that's what he said.
What does that even mean?
Well, it's a provocative way of saying that maybe by focusing so intently on keeping inflation under control for the past few decades, the Fed might have actually weakened the Phillips curve relationship.
So by keeping inflation in check, they removed the inflation that used to happen with low unemployment.
Exactly, yeah. So it's like they remove that pressure.
So is this related to that whole anchored expectations thing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a key part of it.
Oh,
You
yeah.
see, if everyone believes prices will stay stable, businesses are less likely to raise prices, and workers are less likely to demand big raises. So it kind of creates the self-fulfilling prophecy of low inflation.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, that's fascinating. But does the current head of the Fed, Jerome Powell, does he buy into this whole murder mystery thing?
Well, he doesn't use that phrase. But Powell has said that the relationship between unemployment and inflation, it's weakened. He even compared it to a faint heartbeat. Strong 50 years ago, but much weaker today.
Wow. So the head of the Fed is admitting that this once powerful relationship, it's not what it used to be. That's got to be significant.
Right.
So what's his take on why that is?
Well, he seems to agree with this anchored expectations idea. He says if people believe inflation will stay low, it probably will. It's like a psychological component to the whole thing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, expectations influencing reality. That is fascinating. But is everyone on board with this?
Well, that's a great question, and it leads us to, this ongoing debate amongst economists about how relevant the Phillips curve even is today. Some economists, they still see it as a valuable tool, especially in the short term. Others, they say it's just too simple given how complex the economy is today.
Right. Okay. So there's still this debate, which is interesting. And it's not just some academic thing either, right? Like these different interpretations, they affect real world decisions, don't they?
They absolutely do. Different views on the Phillips curve can lead to drastically different approaches to managing the economy, like deciding whether to raise or lower interest rates or to stimulate or restrain spending. It's all tied to how policymakers understand this link between jobs and prices.
Wow. Okay. So clearly there's a lot more to unpack here.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It has real-world consequences, these different ideas about the Phillips curve.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we've seen the Phillips curve, I mean, even with all these different interpretations, it's really only one part of this bigger economic puzzle, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a ton of other things to consider too, like technological advancements, globalization, even automation. All these things impact the labor market and, prices in ways that the Phillips curve, well, maybe it doesn't quite capture it all anymore.
Right. It's just a much bigger picture than it used to be.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin to like wrap our heads around all of this? I mean, if a tool like the Phillips curve maybe isn't giving us the full story anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge for sure.
It is-
There's no easy answer, but I think the first step is to acknowledge that we can't just keep relying on these old models and assumptions, right? We need to be open to, new ideas, new data, new ways of thinking about all this.
Okay, I'm ready. I want to hear about these new approaches. What are economists doing to understand this really complex economic picture?
Well, one area that's getting a lot of attention is behavioral economics.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so this field, it kind of dives into the psychology of economics, right? How people make decisions.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just numbers and equations. It's about how people actually behave.
Yeah, exactly. Because, people aren't always rational.
Right, of course.
So, emotions and biases and social influences, they all play a role.
That makes total sense.
So understanding how people, actually behave in these economic situations, it can give us some really valuable insights.
Yeah, like why do people do the things they do? I mean, like when it comes to money, right? Why do some people save and others, are in debt?
Right, exactly. Or why do some businesses do really well while others fail, even if they're in a similar market, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Behavioral economics can help shed some light on those types of questions.
Okay, so it's not just about fixing the economy. It's about understanding the people in the economy, right?
Exactly.
That's cool. It seems like, understanding that human element could help us create better
Yeah.
policies, right? Policies that work with people's natural tendencies instead of, trying to fight them.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the hope.
Okay, so behavioral economics. What else?
Well, another big change is this, the focus on data.
Oh, yeah. Big data. Everyone's talking about that.
Right. With the massive amounts of information we have now, economists can track trends and test ideas like never before.
Okay, so we're not just relying on those like theoretical models anymore.
Right. We can actually see what's happening in the real world.
But how does that help us manage the economy? Just having all this data.
Well, it gives us a much more detailed view, right? We can see how different policies or even like random events impact different parts of the economy.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, we can see, how consumers are behaving, what's happening in the financial markets. It's all connected.
It's like we have a real-time view,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And that can help policymakers make better decisions.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So, with all this new data and these new approaches,
Hmm.
I mean, do we even need the Phillips curve anymore?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's one that economists are still debating.
Really?
Yeah, some say the Phillips curve, I mean, even with some tweaks, it can still offer some insight, especially, in the short term. Others say, it's just not as useful as it once was.
So not totally obsolete, but maybe not the go-to tool it used to be.
Right. It's maybe the piece of the puzzle, but just one piece.
Right.
We need to look at the whole picture.
So a more holistic approach.
Exactly. One that brings together lots of perspectives and data. We even need to look beyond economics, I think. Yeah, it's about recognizing how complex the world is and not trying to oversimplify things.
I like that. So we're entering a new era in economics, one that's more, open to all this complexity.
I think so, yeah. It's a shift in how we think about the economy, how we manage it.
And this has big implications for, how we deal with things like inflation and unemployment.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh,
I mean, if we accept that there's no easy fix, no magic bullet, then we have to be more flexible, right? More willing to try new things, see what works.
okay, so more experimentation.
Yeah, pretty much. We can't be afraid to try new things, to learn from our mistakes and to just constantly adapt based on what the evidence tells us.
I like that. That sounds a lot more dynamic than what we've been doing.
Right. It's less about dogma and more about, constantly learning.
That's really interesting. But what does all this mean for, like, everyday people? Those of us who aren't economists.
Well, I think it means we need to stay informed, stay curious.
Yeah.
The more we understand about how the economy works, the better decisions we can make for ourselves, right?
Right.
And the more we can advocate for, the kind of future we want.
Absolutely. I mean, it's empowering, right, to realize that we all have a role to play here.
Yeah, it's not just about policymakers or academics, it's about all of us.
So we all need to be more economically literate.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I like that. It's about taking ownership.
And remember, economics, it's not just numbers and graphs, it's about people, their choices, their dreams, their struggles.
It's about people's stories.
Exactly. And
Right.
that's what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. It's always changing. I love that. Yeah, it's a good reminder that economics isn't just some, theory out there. It's something that we all participate in every day, right?
Exactly. Every time we buy something or invest money or even, choose a career path, we're part of the economy.
Right.
And, understanding how it works, it can help us make smarter decisions, both for ourselves and for, society as a whole.
So it's not just for, like, the experts or policymakers.
Yeah.
It's about all of us understanding the basics of how things work so we can be part of the conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, those resources like that St. Louis Fed article we talked about, they're so valuable, right? They
Yeah.
break down these complex ideas into, language that everyone can understand.
Which is so important.
It is. It's about making economics feel, relevant to people's lives.
Right. And not so intimidating.
Exactly. Yeah, because it can be.
It can. And, it's not just about the technical stuff either.
Yep.
It's about thinking about the values behind our economic system, too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like, are we just focused on growth no matter what? Or are we trying to build an economy that's sustainable and fair?
Right. Are we thinking about the future?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And those questions, they need both, economic understanding and ethical considerations.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's about the kind of society we want to live in, right?
Exactly. And that brings us back to, the Phillips curve and all these debates about it. Like, if we're moving beyond this simple idea of a trade-off between inflation and unemployment, what are some new ways to think about these things?
Well, one idea that's gaining traction is something called inclusive growth.
Inclusive growth.
Yeah. So it's not just about the economy growing overall,
Okay.
but about making sure that the benefits of that growth are spread out, across all of society.
Oh, so it's not just about, like, GDP going up. It's about making sure everyone benefits.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we actually, make growth more inclusive?
Well, it means looking at things like income inequality,
Uh-huh.
access to opportunities and social mobility. Like, we need to build an economy that works for everyone, not just a select few.
I mean, that sounds great in theory, but how do we get there in practice?
It's going to require a multi-pronged approach, for sure.
Okay.
We need to invest in things like education and job training, support entrepreneurship and create a tax system that's more fair.
Right. But those are big changes. I mean, how do we make sure they actually happen?
Yeah, well, it's going to take political will for sure,
Of course.
but it also takes public awareness and, smart policies. We need to elect leaders who care about these issues, and we need to have, these conversations about what kind of economy we want to build.
Right. So it's on us as citizens, too.
It is, yeah. We all have a role to play, not just in our own choices, but in pushing for policies that, reflect our values.
That's a great point. It's a good reminder that we're not just, passive passengers in this whole thing, right?
Exactly. We have agency. We can make a difference.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think this has been a really eye-opening deep dive into the Phillips curve.
Yeah, me too.
We started out talking about this, this one economic concept, but we ended up discussing like the future of the economy.
It's all connected, right?
It is. And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that, we need to move beyond these simple models and really embrace the complexity of how the economy works.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And to our listener out there, keep exploring these questions, keep learning, stay engaged, because we're all in this together.
That's right, we are.
And who knows, maybe this deep dive will spark some new ideas out there, some fresh perspectives that can help us all build a better economic future.
I hope so.
Me too. Well, until next time, keep those minds curious and keep those conversations going.
Absolutely. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
See you later.